Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Don't Mom Alone podcast. I'm your host, Heather McFadden, and this is the place where I get to walk alongside you and connect you with people and resources so you know that you don't mom alone. And in today's episode, number 470, I don't want you to mom alone when it comes to creating a balanced tech plan, especially this summer. So I've invited Andrea Davis from Better Screen Time to join me on the show.
When I don't take my phone in my bedroom, I'm like sleeping so much better. I'm reading my books again, or having a conversation with my spouse or partner, and we're connecting again. And so you can start to share those benefits with your kids. And that's super powerful too, because then it becomes less about rules and it becomes about like who we're becoming and actually benefiting from these changes.
Andrea is a mom of 5. She has her degree in secondary education, and she's the founder of Better Screen Time. She is here to share a ton of wisdom and guidance on tech and screens for summer and beyond. And what I love is her more balanced approach. She's not saying no screen. She's not saying free for all. And she is supporting and equipping us to create plans with our family. And I'm pushing her. I'm giving her the hard questions. I want some realistic solutions here, people. So I hope you appreciate any pushback I give, or just kind of narrowing down on like, what does that look like exactly? Please check out the show notes, because there's lots of great links and resources from her in the show notes and on her website. At the end of the show, I'll share about my conversation with Bruce and the plan we came up with together to discuss with our boys. But this is a longer conversation, so let's get right to it. Here we go. Andrea, welcome to the Don't Mom Alone podcast.
Thanks, Heather. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Well, I've had several in-person conversations and a text message from mom friends like, what do we do this summer? How are you handling this, Heather? And I'm like, I don't know. Even my husband, I said, we need to have a talk about technology for the summer. I said, I'm interviewing Andrea. I'm going to get some ideas, and then we will regroup and have our plan ready, because it just feels like since 2020, it's been wheels off every summer. And I don't like the feeling. I don't like the feeling of it. And it's gone real extreme. And so I'd love for you to chat with us today, give us some really great practical ideas. Before we do, I'd love for you to introduce your family to us and kind of your own personal journey of creating tech balance.
Yeah, for sure. So I am a mom of 5. My oldest is 19 and she is away at college. And so that's been our first year doing that. My youngest turns 10 tomorrow. And so I've got 4 girls and 1 boy. Those are the dynamics of our family. Our boy is number 4. So he's sandwiched between all the girls. My husband is a software engineer, so we are not completely, away from technology. However, we are the family that put our TV in a closet many years ago. And when my husband was in grad school at Purdue, I had an amazing friend there, and she was this incredible reader. And I said, Rachel, what did your parents do to instill this love of reading? And she said, oh, well, we didn't have a TV growing up. And I just met that with curiosity. And so I remember going home and telling my husband, Tyler, I said, what would you think if we just put the TV in the closet and we used it like an appliance? And so we'll pull it out, for family movie night and whatnot. And my husband's not really into sports. I know this wouldn't go over in every home, but my husband was like, he's an engineer, totally practical. He's like, sure. So that's what we did. And crazily enough, we have done that ever since. And so we would pull it out for family movie night and for like the Olympics. My husband even made this homemade antenna out of cardboard. And so we worked like super hard to keep screens from taking over. Well, fast forward, years later, we moved across the country from Illinois to Oregon, where we now live. And our oldest was 12 at the time. And she is like the ultimate oldest child, like the kind of kid that cleans her room without being asked. And we handed over an abandoned smartphone to her so she could stay in touch with all of these friends she left behind in middle school, which is not fun, as we all know. And we could stay in touch with her in this place where we didn't know anyone. Well, fast forward a few months later, and we just realized it was too much too soon. Again, these were kind of the wild west days of smartphones. Apple screen time didn't exist. And so we took a step back. We went back to a brick phone, which was super painful for everybody. But I always tell parents it was, one of the best decisions I made. And at that point, I decided to use my teaching degree. So my degree is in secondary ed to instead teach parents about managing technology because again, we were trying to figure this out and we wanted this close connected family without technology getting in the way, but also recognize the fact that technology wasn't going anywhere, right? So at that point, I just started teaching parents about a slow tech approach. And that's how Better Screen Time was born. And that's why I'm here because tech is here and our kids grow up. And so we have to learn how to figure that out, right?
Totally. Well, and my husband was the kid who the TV broke and his parents just never replaced it.
Oh, nice.
But I wouldn't say that it resulted in an adult who doesn't like TV because the
Yeah.
first thing he bought for our new home 20 years ago was a TV. But I mean, he does love to read. I think that's true. But I think
Yeah.
it's tricky. Like our TV's not in the closet. We have a couple different TVs, and so far every older teen has a phone. And yes, there's screen time, but even then, like with an 18 or 19-year-old, you can't be like telling them how many hours they get to spend on their phone anymore. So
Right.
I'm in this tricky stage of knowing what's best. I've interviewed the people. What's the guy, Andy something, who did the Flourishing Family?
Oh, Andy Crouch.
Yes. I had him on the
Yes.
show.
TechWise Family. Yes. He's so great.
He's fantastic. I just did an episode on the RO box and I got one.
Oh,
And
yeah. Awesome.
one of our youngest who has a phone, not our youngest, our third, who is the youngest one to have a phone, he is the most faithful in putting it in there before he goes to bed. But it's like, anyway, I just am feeling overwhelmed. And
Hmm.
I don't feel like I have good tools for the summer I want to have. Like
Yeah.
an enjoyable summer where we do more than just all sit and watch TV or everyone's scrolling on their screens and really I mean, I know you have one boy, but like boys, probably the social media is not the draw, maybe Snapchat, but it's video games,
Hmm.
just hours
Hmm.
and hours and hours of video games. And we have limited
Hmm.
that in the past, but it just feels like you get on a game and it's a game that if they quit, they get penalized. And it's like you start a game and then it's an hour to finish it.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just kind of over it. I'm just being real honest because I know people are out
Yeah.
there in similar situations and
Totally.
I don't know, we feel a little
So
bit
many,
lost. So,
so many parents are feeling that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the first step really is being, especially with kids that age, being just completely honest and having a family meeting, a family conversation. And you can have a family meeting no matter the ages of your kids. And that really was where we started years ago when we took away the phone and we went back to a brick phone. And we're like, okay, we need to do a better job of preparing ourselves and preparing our kids. We sat down and we just got out like a big poster board. You could get out a whiteboard, whatever. And we just wrote down like where, when, what, how long. And it was just like, okay, let's talk about technology. And honestly, I should back up. Prior to that, we actually just had a conversation about the pros and cons of tech. So we made a thumbs up and a thumbs down list. And so I asked the kids, okay, thumbs up. What are the things that you love about technology? And so we made our list. And then I said, okay, thumbs down. What are the things that we need to watch out for? And again, long lists. And especially like the ages of your kids, they know by this point, right? Like they know the things that they need to watch out for on tech. And the thing I love about this exercise, even before you even make a family tech plan, is that it is kind of an initial entry into that skill of what I call digital discernment, right? And so it's being able to discern between right and wrong, good and bad, and not just with the content, but also with our time and how we're spending our time, right? And I think it's a great gateway into the conversation before you make any boundaries or rules. So honestly, that's where I would start. is starting with that conversation. And then your next family meeting or conversation. And when you end that, you can say, okay, guys, next time we get together, we're going to set some boundaries for, if you want to say for the summer or for permanently, whatever works for you. If right now you might just want to think about summer, we're going to set some boundaries and want everyone to think about what makes sense for our family, what makes sense for you. Let's come back to our meeting next time. And then you start addressing, okay, the where, like where are we going to use screens? When are we going to use them? When are we not going to use them? You know what? And I think there's so much value in getting it on paper, because later they'll say, well, mom, that's not what you said. Or dad, like, you didn't say that. And so again, it can be helpful to get it all written down. And I highly recommend just like putting on the fridge or putting it by wherever your electronics are and just having it visible. And this is so much more impactful and powerful than like, say, a tech contract. Like, I think for a long time that became very popular. People would print out these long cell phone contracts or tech contracts and have their kids sign them. And I think there's a couple of things with that. It just doesn't really work. Number one, you're not really getting buy-in from your kids. They're just wanting to sign it so they can have the access to the tech. And number two, I think back to like my teen years, and could I have signed a list of like all these things I would never do? Because a lot of these contracts, that's how they are, right? Like, I will never
give my information.
Do this. I will never do that, right? And obviously, like, that's the goal, but I think we're just kind of setting them up to fail. And so instead, if we're like, okay, well, here's our family tech plan. Okay, we're going to decide that we're not taking screens into the bedrooms and bathrooms. And when we sat down as a family to do this, that was one of the first boundaries that I shared and introduced. And of course, my kids came back and were like, well, mom, you take your screens into the bedrooms and the bathrooms. And I was like, oh, you're right. And so I committed at that time that I would stop doing that. And was that hard for me? Totally. But now, like after 6 years have gone by, it's just habit. It's almost like, I don't know, wearing my shoes into someone else's house. Like I just don't take my phone into my bedroom. But it was not always that way. And so I think that's the other power and benefit of creating a family tech plan, is that your kids can see that you're committed as well. That it's not just about them and them being a problem, because nobody likes that, right? Our kids don't love that. So as a parent, can we sit down and have this conversation? What can we commit to doing to better model healthy tech habits? And then as we start to reap the benefits of that and see like, oh my goodness, when I don't take my phone in my bedroom, I'm like sleeping so much better. I'm reading my books again, or I'm having a conversation with my spouse or partner, and we're connecting again. And so you can start to share those benefits with your kids. And that's super powerful too, because then it becomes less about rules and it becomes about like who we're becoming and actually benefiting from these changes, right?
Yeah.
So I could keep going on, but I'm going to stop there because I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are.
Y'all have been with me long enough that whenever possible, I am trying to clean up any products that I purchase. And that even includes what goes on my body, which is including my hair and scalp help. And finding something that actually works and is made with clean ingredients always seems like a trade-off. But with Vegamore, I get products that are clean and give me a visibly healthier hair and scalp. With Vegamore, I have seen visibly thicker, fuller, shinier, longer hair without all those harsh ingredients. And every little cute, my favorite color is pink, and every cute pink bottle of Vegamore, they are 100% cruelty-free, never formulated with potentially harmful chemicals like parabens or hormones. And I really love that I can add the Grow Revitalizing shampoo and conditioner and the Grow serum and see results without having to worry that I'm damaging my body in some way. What's even better is Vegamore has value kits like their Grow Essential Kits, where you get to try even more than one product with a great savings. And when you sign up for a monthly subscription, you save even more. So you don't run out of products that you need to take care of your hair. Consistency is key in your routine to get the most beautiful, healthy looking hair. So when you use that Vegamore Grow Serum every day, you can see your hair and your scalp flourishing. Fun fact, Vegamore sells 1 bottle of Grow Serum every 15 seconds on their website. That's how good this stuff is. So give your hair the power of the little pink bottle with Vegamore. For a limited time, Don't Mom Alone listeners get 20% off their first order by going to vegamore.com/DMA and use that code DMA at checkout. That's Vegamore spelled VEGAMOUR.com/DMA, code DMA to save 20% on your first order. VEGAMOUR.com/DMA, code DMA. I think that that's really good. I think it will be stretching for even my husband and I, and like hopefully getting his buy-in. I'm curious to hear what you think, like if the mom is all in and wanting to have this conversation and the dad is like dragging his feet either because he doesn't think it's necessary or he doesn't want to have to manage it. But I do think it's important because even my 12-year-old, who's the only one right now without a phone, so he's getting to experience life when everybody has one and he doesn't, is
Mhm.
he's like, "It's so silly. Moms are like literally scrolling on their phone, reading about how they need to tell their kids to stop being on their phone." And he's so right. He's like,
He's so right.
yeah. So, yeah. How do you, if you aren't on the same page as a parenting team,
Mhm.
how do you manage that?
I'll say number 1, that's super common.
Yeah.
Like that is more the norm.
Yeah.
So I think first recognizing that's totally normal and to not feel bad or guilt about that or like, oh, like I have to do this all alone. So instead, I think we have to shift our mindset and think this is my opportunity as the parent who is aware of this problem and is feeling that tugging in my heart, like that really in my gut, that we need to make some changes. This is my opportunity to lead our family. And I know that can feel uncomfortable. And I think maybe, especially if you are the mom listening, I'm sure most of your audience are moms, it can maybe feel uncomfortable to be like, okay, well, I'm going to be the leader on this, but you are. In all honesty, if you're feeling that desire in your heart to make changes in your home, this is your opportunity to lead. So I think that's the first step is just accepting that and being okay with it and saying, I'm going to be the leader on this. And then obviously we do need to partner up because nobody can do it alone. And so the next step really is sharing, almost like raising awareness and sharing, first of all, what your concerns are, but also sharing some of the research and the data that you're seeing. And, we share a lot of that ironically on our Instagram at Better Screen Time. Like I do share a lot of the risks and the dangers and things that we're seeing, but also getting personal and sharing like what are you seeing in your own home? And again, this I don't know if you want to do it on date night or whenever, but just sometime when you're not both super tired, but when you can have an honest conversation when the kids aren't around and just saying, this is what I'm seeing in our home. It doesn't feel right. And how I've described this before is an uncomfortable shift in our family dynamic. That is how I've described it. And that was what I felt when we handed over that phone to our oldest. I could see it was interrupting the relationships. And so I truly believe that we can change that shift in our family dynamic at any point, and it does take work. So I think sharing what's in your heart, share the research, and then invite or ask for their input. So it's not like I'm just going to take over the family meeting and everything I say goes. Like, what suggestions or thoughts do you have? Because this is a problem. How do you suggest that we fix it? Because I need your help. And I mean, we're in a partnership, we're in a marriage, and we're a part of a team. And so working together. And I think as it's also important to remember that a lot of times the other person in our marriage or partnership brings balance to the conversation. And I know even when it comes to technology, I know for me, when I started getting panicked and worried about it, I wanted to like all the parental controls and all the filters and all the things, right? And I remember coming to my husband and just like, panicked, really, like parenting out of fear, which is not a good place to parent from. And my husband, being a software engineer and having a PhD, was like, I hate to tell you this, but the kids will eventually learn to get around all of those things. And it's not that we don't use them, but he said, Andrea, you have to teach our kids, like we have to help them build that internal filter, right? And I think not only is the internal filter good as far as just like our content, but also about how we use our time. And our kids need our help and our guidance in how they use their time, especially this summer. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, what thoughts are coming up for you?
That's good. I mean, I can definitely hear the mom who's come to me before, who's created the tech plan maybe, and then it's like the husband isn't sticking to it, and so the kids are like, well, dad's not even doing it, so why do we have to do it? But I think you're right. Like those are
Mhm.
the maybe the French cases, but if you're out there, you're not alone, and that may happen. But I think that balance is important, because as moms, we can sense things that are off or that need repair, or we're trying to cultivate spaces of beauty and peace and flourishing. And so we can't distrust our voice. Like, I want to encourage the mom that if you're feeling those things, lean into that. But I think I know for me, I can almost go to a nagging place and feel like I'm not heard,
Mhm.
where in reality, he's hearing me, but he doesn't have a solution. And so it's like the lack of engagement is not because he doesn't hear me, but not is for not really knowing what to do. Ironically, we were starting this conversation right before our dog was attacked by a dog and I was attacked by a dog, so we never got to finish the conversation. So,
Hmm.
the enemy's out there.
Wow.
I don't like, I'm just
Yes.
saying, like, there's a supernatural aspect to this too that, like, I felt personally. But I think, yeah, I think empowering the mom that if you're feeling a sense and a shift in your home, that you do have a voice, but not to come down with like out of fear, and not to come out of like a place of nagging, but to ask
Mhm.
for perspective and balance from your spouse, and to come up with a solution that's realistic together. Um, I'm trying to walk through this in my mind. Like, let's say we come up with a plan.
Mhm.
It feels like then my job becomes policeman, and I lose like
Mhm.
relationship in a different way.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
So, yeah, for sure. So, when you come up with that plan, you can have your kids help come up with consequences, and maybe though you'll have to negotiate and make some compromises a little bit. But like, okay, let's say that we've decided that this is the limit, the amount of times that we're doing whatever, your family does on screens, and people abuse that privilege. And I think talking about it as a privilege as well is helpful. Then what do you guys think the consequences should be? And have them help with that. And I think that's part of where we get some buy-in, and especially with older kids, and maybe we lose that privilege of getting to use the technology for the next 24 hours or whatever it is. And I think I like to think of the family tech plan as a living document as well, where we're kind of testing and trying different things. And you might try something and it doesn't really work, well, you can go back to that and change it. And, I think the other big part of this, so we have a summer screen time survival guide. So one page of it is just the where, when, what, how long. And then there's actually a section on there that says like, is there a day this summer when we could go screen free, like picking maybe a day of the week when maybe you're not going completely screen free. Maybe you're still texting or calling people, but you're like letting go of optional tech, to use Cal Newport's term, and thinking of letting go of, like the video games, social media, those kinds of things. Is there a day of the week when we could do that? I found that to be super helpful. Our day is Sunday, but it could be, any day that works for your family, just to have that reset. And then even maybe picking a day or a week out of the year at the summer. For us, that's always seems to be easiest when we're going camping, but whatever it is when you're just like letting go of all that optional tech. But the second page of that survival guide actually is all about helping your kids and your teens focus on other things for the summer. And I think that's helpful too when we can de-emphasize the focus on the screens a little bit and instead emphasize, well, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? And so, like, one of the questions is just like fun. Like, what is like, if you could do nothing else this summer, what is the one thing you want to look back and say, that was my favorite part of summer? Right. And then you're like focusing on that. And then one section is like a skill. What's one skill that you want to learn this summer? And I think that's helping your teens give them some purpose too. So every family is different, but you could totally, when you're sitting down and having that conversation as a family, you could be like, okay, get really specific. Like, how much time do you want to spend on learning that skill each day or each week, however you want to put it? And then there's a spot on there for like service. So what's like one piece of service that we could do this, that you could do this summer, whether that's for a neighbor or a friend or a family member? Again, that's just getting them to think outside of themselves, which we all need, but I think especially during adolescence, because it's just naturally a time when they turn inward because they're trying to figure out who they are, right? And so I like that paper on this screen time survival guide. And we do that every summer with our kids. We sit down toward the end of the school year. We get out of school a little later here in the Pacific Northwest. So we still have another few weeks of school into June. But we always sit down and fill that out. And I kind of try to help my kids like think, what are some hands-on things that you want to do? And that is helpful because, again, you are helping them fill their time and find purpose off of a screen and you kind of can de-emphasize the screen time a little bit.
Well, and that kind of goes to what I saw you posting, something we'd done in 2019 that I learned from a guest about, like earning tickets to get screen time. And it was
Mm,
great in that they were asking me for jobs all the time. It was like, oh, do you have a 2-ticket job? Do you have, and I'd be like, oh, somebody needs to move the laundry from the washer to the dryer. It's a 2-ticket job. And like kids were begging me for jobs. The house never was so,
right?
I like had to come up with things. The trick was it did feel like the video game time was the most important. It was the whole day centered around, it was
Yeah.
after lunch for a couple hours. And it was like, that was our life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I didn't love that. I knew I didn't love that, but I didn't have another option. And it was like, okay, well, they're actually working for it and it's a reward. So it felt okay. But I
Right.
do see like that reward based system creates this, it magnifies the tech over the rest of your life.
It totally does. And I think as moms, like we enjoy systems, right? We like routines. And it feels like, okay, well, this simplifies my life. And in a lot of time, in a lot of ways, it does. But this is one case where I'll say, yeah, that isn't a system you want to adopt simply because exactly what you said. It gives the screens too much power. And then it's all the kids and the teenagers are thinking about. And we just want to like, it's not that we can never unwind or decompress with the screen, but we just want it to be one of many things that we might choose in a day to have some fun or unwind or do with our friends, right? And so I think we definitely want to have expectations and things that we get done before we allow time on a screen.
So is that in your tech plan? Like, would you have in the plan, like, is that under the what or no?
Yeah, you could definitely include it there. So just saying all, jobs, whatever your family does needs to be done before we have time on a screen. And I think that's really helpful. I think one thing that helps too is just like thinking about this habit loop. Again, I like the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I know a lot of people have read that. But thinking about kind of that trigger, and that's what I kept seeing is a lot of people would have like reward charts on their fridge, and like when you do all this stuff then you get screen time, right? And so it's almost like that screen time reward chart is a trigger, and it's like, oh, okay, in my mind when I do all these things, then I always get screen time and then it's just keeps cycling back. So I think what's better is having you've got your daily expectations and that's fine. And in your screen time plan, saying that those things need to be done. But we don't want to dangle the screen time like a carrot and be using it for a reward or a punishment because it really does. It just draws too much attention to it. And then everything revolves around screen time.
So I mean, it's basically like the same though, because you're saying that those things have to be done. Like, are you confirming those things are done? Like, do they have to come check it? I'm just trying to figure out, like, practically, how does this work out? They wake up and they're like, I did everything and it's 9 a.m. Can I get on the screen?
Yeah. I think as a family too, you can decide like, is there a certain time of day
Hmm.
when, we're going to focus on being productive or getting work done and maybe screens are for a certain time of day. So when my kids were really little, we Friday was like the day when they got to watch something on the desktop because we had piano lessons on Friday afternoons. And so the piano teacher would come to our house and they would all cycle through because I needed the house to be quiet. And so I think as a mom,
Right.
totally fine to like think about what's a system that works when maybe I do need a little bit of screen time to help me out. And that's okay. And I think with young kids, like making it predictable like that it makes it so much easier because then they're not begging and they know what to expect. As your kids get older, this doesn't work as much because they are busier and you also don't want them turning down, like, let's say, I know some families are like, okay, well, the weekends, it's just kind of a free for all. And then sometimes their kids will be turning down opportunities to go do something with a friend because they're like, no, this is my day to use technology.
Yep.
and so
We used to
and so
have
I
that with
think,
Fridays after school. Like, I was like, why do they
yeah.
never want to go be with friends? And it was because it was like no games during the week, but they started Friday afternoons. And it was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, well, maybe we need to, I don't know, wait till
Totally.
Saturday. Like, we just don't do it, so that they would be more social or choose that.
Yeah. So, like with my younger kids now, we do basically, they do electronics a couple times a week, and that works well. It's no certain day. I mean, they'll know again, Sunday's kind of our more screen light day. So, it's not going to happen that day. But when things are done, then they can have a couple of turns, and that works well because it's not an everyday thing. So, it doesn't become a habit. And my teenagers are just a lot busier. So I think that's another thing I want to bring up, like with the older kids. I like this idea of like these three P's. So thinking about do they have a purpose, a plan, and a passion? So a purpose really is just a responsibility, like a job. So if they don't have a job outside of your house, then they need to have some pretty big responsibilities in the home that they're learning some skills and it's taking some time. And I just think that's such a gift to teenagers to learn how to work, right? And then they're naturally going to have less time on a screen because they're busy
Yeah.
working, like they
Yeah.
have responsibilities, right? And then thinking about a plan. So again, that's where that screen time survival kit comes into play. The plan is like, what skills do they want to learn in the summer? What memories do they want to make? Those kinds of things. So getting really specific. And if it doesn't work in your family to sit down and do it all together, you can sit down and do it individually with each of your older kids or teenagers. And maybe they need more of that individual, almost like coaching and attention to really take this seriously and be like, we're not going to spend all summer on a screen. So let's talk about this. Like, what is your what's your plan? What's your plan this summer? And I like putting the ball in their court.
Yeah.
Like, what's your plan? And then, yeah, and then their passion. So what's something that they really want to learn? And, several years ago, my daughter said, Mom, I really would love to get a drum set. And I'm like, okay, we have a small house with 7 people. I don't know how that's going to work. And I just kept feeling that like feeling in my heart that we needed to do that. So, I mean, your listeners can't necessarily see this, but here's the drum set. This small room is not only my office and the workout room, but it's also our music room. And we found this drum sets that they're electronic, and so you can put headphones on them. And so it takes up less space, and she can put headphones on. It's still a little bit noisy, but I will tell you, Heather, that daughter is now 16, and she plays that drum set every single day.
Yeah.
Like every day. It's how she decompresses and unwinds. So I think every teenager needs something like that is just a way to decompress. And again, she will use the iPad and use YouTube to play the songs, but like she's out in the open and she's using the screen with a purpose, right? And so I think that's something else, just as you're talking to your kids, I like to divide it in screen time into using the 3 C's. So am I creating, am I connecting, or am I consuming? And when you're making your family tech plan, you can even like make your 3C buckets and be like, okay, guys, like if we're creating on a screen, what would that look like? And for my kids, it was always like making a movie together. Like they love making movies together. And I'm like, that takes 3 hours. Totally fine. That is totally different than them being alone on a screen playing a game, right?
Or scrolling. Yeah. Or watching. I feel like YouTube videos are it's basically TikTok. It's YouTube Shorts.
Yes,
like
the YouTube Shorts.
Or Instagram Reel. I mean, it's just like scroll hours.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's
that's in the consuming bucket. Yeah.
That's in consuming. Yeah. And you can think about dividing consuming into 2 different buckets as well. You can be like, is this careless consumption or is this conscious? Am I like doing this with a purpose? Like, am I learning how to play the drums, or am I learning how to crochet with a YouTube video or whatever it is? That's very different, right? Than just mindlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
And those are skills that our kids need to learn. And I think, again, technology is here. When your kids leave home, they have to learn how to manage their time on their own. And as I watched my oldest at college, and we had some conversations, because we've always left the screens out of the bedrooms and the bathrooms, at least since we had that initial conversation 6 years ago. And I knew she'd be in a dorm where she would need to keep her phone in her room. And so and she has a laptop. And we had a conversation. I just said, I would encourage you to keep your bed as like your screen-free sanctuary, because no longer is your room going to be screen-free, because it's just not possible. Her desk was in there and everything, but I said, you can make your bed that safe little place. And I'm not there to police it. I have no idea like how well she's done with that. But again, these are like conversations that we can have, and they'll learn. And sometimes some kids have to learn the hard way. But I think sometimes parents, especially at this point when their kids get older, want to just dust their hands off with it and be like, okay, I made it, whatever. But then what I'm seeing now is like, your adult children come back and they're in your home. And especially if you still got younger kids there, like that still affects and influences the family, how they're using their screen. And so we're always the parent. It really is worth trying to put in some boundaries now, no matter how old your kids are, really.
By doing this interview, I've realized the power of creating a plan and how important it is that we think through the what, when, where, how long of our screen time. Well, that doesn't just apply to technology. It's important that we create a plan for things that relate to our future and things that are worth protecting. And so I want to introduce you to a great option to help you make an estate plan now. That means gaining security of your assets and peace of mind for you and your loved ones. So with Trust and Will, you can create and manage a custom estate plan starting at just $199. And if you go to trustandwill.com/DMA, you'll get 10% off plus free document shipping. I have found firsthand the value of estate planning when I went through the loss of my dad. It was so helpful that he was a lawyer and he had created a plan, and we didn't have to, in the midst of grief, also decide what was going to happen with all of the assets. for he and my mom. And so what I love is with Trust and Will, they make it simple. The website is straightforward. The process is straightforward. You can have peace of mind because you know that it's taken care of. I know that whenever we've gone on a trip, just Bruce and I, we are really thankful that we've taken the time to manage all that so that we can enjoy our trip, whether it's care wishes or nomination of guardians or final arrangements, power of attorney, all of these things ensure that your loved ones and your family don't have to go through lengthy, expensive legal proceedings to decide what happens with your assets. If you go online, you'll see that they do have this simple step-by-step process that will guide you from the start to the finish. And you have live customer support through the phone or chatting or email. Trust and Will has an overall rating of excellent and thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Secure your assets and protect your loved ones with Trust and Will. Get 10% off plus free shipping of your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/DMA. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/DMA. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. Now, believe it or not, although managing technology is challenging, some things about parenting get easier. I no longer get my children dressed. They can dress themselves. They brush their own teeth. We're going to do the laundry themselves, okay? And fold it and put it away. Some things become a challenge, and you need others to guide you through, just like Andrea is guiding us through technology today. Well, for me, it was, how do we handle when my boys aren't with me and they need to pay for things? What do we do in that case? I don't have cash on hand. It's hard to manage. I don't know where they're spending money. Well, my brother told me about Greenlight, and after he did, it has been a game changer for our family. Super, super helpful. Each of my boys has a debit card, and through the Money app, Bruce and I are able to manage how much each boy has in their account. If we need to make an instant transfer, like for my older boys, when they're buying gas for the car, we can transfer money into their account. We can see where they're spending money. Also, we can set up allowances ahead of time. You could even set up if you want them to do certain tasks around the house or different chores for you, and you can assign an amount for that chore and use the Greenlight app for that. It's also a place where you can teach your kids how to save and invest and spend wisely. There's different games that can teach money skills. I think it is such a great option. Again, really, really helped us solve the money question. And millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight. It's easy, convenient, and a great way for parents to raise financially smart kids and for families to navigate life together. Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/DMA. That's greenlight.com/DMA to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/DMA. Talk to us too about you have boredom busters or things. So like, let's say that you as a family have come up with your how long, whatever it is, hour and a half, hour, 2 minutes, I don't know, whatever your amount is. And it's the end of that time. One question is the child managing the end of it? Are you in charge of the end of it? Like, that feels to me something that has been tricky to manage. And then 2, when it is done, how do we encourage them if they're like, oh, I'm so bored? So I guess answer the first question.
Yes, those are great questions. So how you monitor the time will depend on the age of your child. And not only age, disposition, I would say too, because we all know that all kids are different, right?
Wise. Yes. Yes.
So, for younger kids, I really love the timer. That's just like the timer that has the visual, you turn it and it has like a visual red thing. And I like that because it's external, it's away from the computer, it's very visual. So even for like a show, let's say you're turning on Bluey and the episodes, however long, 30 minutes. And even just using that visual timer and having a conversation before it starts is super helpful with little kids. So just saying this, I'm so glad you get to watch your show. It's 30 minutes long. I'm going to start the timer. And then even asking them when the show is done, we're going to turn this off. And what would you like to do when the show is done? And I like that because you're like already mentally planting a seed that we're going to move on with something else. And what is something else that they can look forward to?
Because then that becomes the reward, or like that
Yeah,
becomes the, yeah.
exactly. And especially if it's time with you. And I know as parents, we're busy, but I think our kids want to be with us more than we realize. And I always tell parents, reward your kids with your time, not screen time. So thinking about what is something that we can do, even if it's like, we're going to unload the dishwasher. You might have work to do. We're like, we're going to unload the dishwasher together. And then I will go out and jump on the trampoline with you.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about all play. I think it is about teaching our kids responsibilities and skills too. Or when the show's done, let's play 10 minutes of Uno. You don't have to sit down for an hour with your
Yeah.
kids. It could be 15 minutes, right? So with young kids, that works really well. With my 10-year-old and my, almost 10 and 12-year-old, I have them set a timer on the computer itself, and I put them in charge of setting that timer. And I just kind of make a mental note of like when it's starting. And we just talk about the fact that, hey, remember to get off when the timer goes off. And then I think, again, it is just kind of part of teaching them a little bit about self regulation. But I am still checking in. So usually they're pretty good, but sometimes I'll know the timer's gone off and they're still on there. They're still on the computer. I'll say, hey, what does your timer say? That's what I'll say. Oh, it went off. Oh, sorry, mom, I'll get off. Or, okay, I just need 2 more minutes, right? And then maybe you're doing a little bit of negotiating, but like there's a big difference between like 2 minutes, finish up a task, and like
Another hour.
30,
Yeah.
another hour.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so just think about that. So again, that works well for me with those kids with that age group, because I feel like I'm starting to teach them a little bit, but I am still checking in, and they're always using screens in the open too. And I can't emphasize that enough. Protects their time, but it also protects their soul and their values, because that's usually when kids are finding the dark places on the digital spaces, is when they're alone. And so being mindful of that. And then with like our older kids and teenagers, they still also set a timer, and I just try to give them a little bit more flexibility as far as, are they getting off when they're supposed to? But I still check in, they still need it. And I mean, for us as adults, we know, like, I mean, I have teenage girls, so I think my probably screen time concerns and challenges are probably a little bit different than yours, Heather. And everyone listening has different things. But like, I had a teenage daughter that was looking for a prom dress, and it was just like,
The online shopping.
every night I gotta look, and I still didn't find something. Oh, I gotta look. And I finally, just a few weeks ago, I told her, I'm like, you just have to give yourself a time limit. And if you don't find something, like, let's think about borrowing a dress. And that's so fascinating, because that's what ended up happening after spending hours for like a week, at chunks at a time looking for a dress. And so again, it's just the options are endless on the internet. And so just thinking about being there and trying to coach them through it. And you can't control every second of their day, every minute, but we still have to provide that accountability, because it's just too much for their brains. So I always tell parents, like, remember the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that's responsible for decision making, isn't fully formed until they're in their mid 20s, right? And then you've got persuasive design, which is the design to keep them hooked, working on the other side. And it, as our US Surgeon General said, it's not a fair fight. And it really isn't. And so as much as we don't want to be the policeman, we have to just be there. And I know you mentioned the word nagging. And so I think that can what it start to feel like. And we can feel like we've got that policeman role, but like, okay, no, I'm just parenting, and I cannot nag. I can just be like, we're showing up with confidence, right? It's time to get off, and we're done. We're going to move on with other things.
Yeah, you have a good voice. You don't sound like pleading. You sound like matter of fact. Like,
Well, that's
that's a
always the goal,
yeah,
right?
that's tricky. It is that
Yeah,
confidence of, I think if you've had the plan, if you've had the conversations, you're kind of you're standing on the foundation of that instead of this like willy-nilly, nobody really knows. I've just hit my limit. Like the other night I was like, that's it. I'm over it. You know what I mean? You just want to throw it all away. Like
yes.
that's the reactionary is not the approach. You know that,
Mhm.
but sometimes you're just emotionally get kind of over it.
Totally. And that's happened to me too. Like I totally have been there, and it's not that that never happens, but it happens much less. And I feel like when you have that family tech plan, again, the expectations are clear.
Yeah.
So that really helps. And I feel like, did I address your second
The
question?
second
Now I can't
question was the
remember.
boredom busters. So like
Yes.
maybe, like I love your idea, especially with younger kids. I think it even works for teens or like middle schoolers, is coming up with a plan for when the time on tech is done, if that's a specified time in your day, creating that list. Maybe it's a summer wish list or bucket list situation, but I think even just ideas of what they can do without you, because we do have jobs. Like I still am going to have to work this summer. It's a thing. Y'all want the podcast to keep
Totally.
happening, so I'm going to have to do some work. So yeah, help us with that concept.
Yes. So we have a list. It's actually called When You Want to Do Nothing. And it's a list of over 100 screen free ideas. It has ideas for kids and teens. So you can find that on our website at betterscreentime.com. We just have a list of downloads there. But that list was actually curated by our Better Screen Time community. So it really is like things that moms
Are real.
actually use and
These
do.
aren't like Pinterest,
Yeah.
like otherworldly, not going to happen kind of ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
they're simple things that don't require a lot of time, energy, or money. So I highly recommend, using something like that, putting it on your fridge. But the second piece to that is inviting your kids or your teens to add their ideas, because that's when you're getting buy-in, you're getting input, and they're a part of this. And so, you could even like download our list and just get like your whiteboard or your big post-it note and write down some of the things on that list, just to start generating the conversation. And it might feel more organic that way. And then the kids can just start adding, and they're like, okay, we're going to put this by. I think this is like complementary to the summer bucket list, because I feel like the summer bucket list I love, and we do that too. But that's usually kind of like the bigger things that require time,
Money.
energy,
Yeah. Mhm.
money, and we love that. But I think the times when screen time usually seeps into our lives is usually more in the downtime,
Mhm.
when mom has to work, or you're feeling like the budget is tight, or yeah, the kids have done all the things and it's the middle of summer and they're like, I'm bored. That's when you need like this list, and it will feel like a lifesaver. So it's like, okay, well, you met your screen time quota for the day, and we're now you've got time to pick something to do. So you can pull out those boredom busters. And you can also pull out that list where the kids wrote down, like, the skills that they wanted to learn, someone they want to serve, those kinds of things. And I always tell parents, like, boredom is way harder on us as a parent than it usually is on our kids. Like the whining and the I'm bored, like it grates on us, but like they're fine and they will figure something out. And have things accessible too. Like, so one other key thing that I tell parents for summer is this strategy, which also comes from Atomic Habits, but it's called reset the room. And with younger kids, this means just like have the Play-Doh available, have the beads, all the crafting things and whatever, and be okay with the messes. Have some puzzles. I always like keeping like a surprise stash with my younger kids. I always had a surprise stash in my closet for one of those days when it really felt like we had burned through all of the things and I was done. And I'd be like, oh, guess what, guys? I have a new puzzle. Voila,
Yeah.
and the puzzle was $10, but it just saved my afternoon.
Yeah.
So with younger kids, that works really well. And I always do just try to set aside some budget money in the summer for those kinds of things. So, you set aside a budget for maybe a family trip, budget for that downtime as well. With teenagers, I've really started loving having outdoor games accessible. So we have a small yard, so we don't like have anything fancy, but we have just like a lot of portable games. And just the other day, my 16-year-old was like, "Hey, mom, my friends and I are going to go play spike ball after school." And I was like, "Awesome." So they stopped by the house after school and they picked it up and they went over to the park and played for a while. So, like spike ball, wiffle ball, we have a game called Cub, or I don't, you might pronounce it Cube, but it's just like a game where you're knocking down these wooden pegs. It's super fun. Just can jam, games like that, and be like, maybe their friends are busy, but they can gather their siblings and go out in the backyard and play for a while. And I also, the library, like make the library your friend, right? And with younger kids, it's like you can take them. But with teenagers, I always say, like, if you can't get your teen to go to the library, either because they're too busy or they just lost interest, bring the library to them and just grab stuff. And some things they'll like pick up and they'll quit looking at. But again, a few weeks ago, I went and I picked up like a sewing book. It was like how to sew dresses and like a Taylor Swift piano book. And I just set them on the table. And when my daughter came home, what do you think she was doing? Like she picked up those books and she was looking through them. So like that's part of resetting the room,
Yeah, that's
like
good.
planting the things that you want to see more of, right?
That's good. That's really good. I
Yeah.
had a friend when she had really little kids. There were 3 of them. And if y'all have really little kids and you're trying to survive the summer without tons of time on screen, she had big bins like full of, she'd taken their toys and she divided them into 5 different bins labeled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on
Mm.
Monday, she would pull out the big bin and like dump it on the floor and they could just like play with all the things. And at the end of the day, the kids helped her put them back in the bin. And then Tuesday, she got out Tuesday's bin. And for that age, like if they're 2, 3,
I love
4,
that.
they're fresh. And it's like they don't get
Yeah.
bored with them because anyway, if they're little enough,
Yes.
like, and you're just needing maybe even 1, I feel like 1, 2, 3, that would be like the perfect age to do a bin system. Just instead of all toys being accessible all the time and they all lose interest, it makes it a little more exciting. Your house isn't
Totally.
chaotic and, they have purpose in helping clean up. And little teeny kids, I think they liked helping me. I feel like they liked helping me clean the kitchen
Totally.
and like do the things. Again, I feel like I could engage younger kids in activities more than I can get teens and middle schoolers. But you know what? Our time is up, Andrea, and I'm real sad about it. So y'all, of course, we're not going to be able to cover every little teeny thing in this episode, but that is why I wanted to connect you with Better Screen Time because they have so many resources, so much support, the latest in technology ideas. And if you do need support on creating your argument for why there needs to be some more boundaries, they can help you with that. So Andrea, thank you so much for being with me today. I really have enjoyed our conversation. I feel inspired. I feel like I'm ready. Put me in, coach.
I hope so. I'm here. If you or anyone else, like you hit some roadblocks, please reach out because I want you to feel like you're not alone. And that I think that's the first step in just, this is your podcast. Don't mom alone, right?
Don't do tech alone. Okay.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, don't feel like, just that you've lost this, and just understand that it's completely normal for this to feel overwhelming, but it doesn't need to feel that way. And it is totally worth fighting this fight. I promise it's so worth it. And our kids need us. They need us now more than ever. So I'm just grateful to you, Heather, for having me on.
So after I had that conversation with Andrea on my walk with Bruce, I told him about what she shared. He and I came up with a plan and we decided we would like to have one-on-one conversations with each of the boys. So for example, he took our oldest out to lunch and they talked through, for each of the boys, we talked through what are some gifts that we see in you, some standout characteristics, and how do those gifts sometimes go awry when screens get involved or when things get out of balance. We also talked through what are some skills you want to gain this summer, even this next year. What are you hoping to grow in? And then our plan is, after having all those individual conversations, to come together as a family and to create our plan for the summer. The how long, the what, the when, and the where. And I think we're going to get pushback. To be honest, we're going to get some pushback. We did a free-for-all week this week. We called it Wheels Off Week because we had funerals. We had Bruce out of town. We had wisdom teeth removal. And so we were like, we're not going to manage it this week. We're going to see how that goes. And it reveals that we definitely need a tech plan. So that's what we're doing. I know every family is different. I don't know how well it's going to go, and I don't know how hard it is to keep to the plan. But I just wanted to be transparent on our family's conversations around technology. And I'm going to pray for us. Pray for wisdom for all of us. Lord, we know that even technology and screens are not outside of your ability to control and manage and guide us through with your Holy Spirit. And I pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment to know what boundaries we need to place where we're being distracted in an unhealthy way, socially, mentally, in our connections. And I pray, Lord, that we would just really lean into pushing past the uncomfortable and seeing the benefit of having these harder conversations. We pray that it doesn't disrupt relationship that we control our own tempers and frustrations regarding this topic and are filled with your peace and your patience. And I pray for summers that are restorative and that we all grow and learn and rest together. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. I know summer's not easy. It's not easy to be working through the summer when you have kids home. I'm sure you heard kids in the background while I was recording these ads. But we're all doing the best that we can do. And moms, I know it is, for me, a very challenging season. And so just praying for you if you're in a challenging season, that you would experience grace today. And okay, thanks for joining me. I'll be back here next week. I think, we have a sidetrack coming out this Friday. And then next Monday, I will be back with comedian Dustin Nickerson for our little Father's Day episode. All right, y'all have a great week. Adios.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Don't Mom Alone podcast. If you're wanting to connect with more people and more resources to help remind you that you're not alone, head over to don'tmomalone.com. That's where you'll also find show notes with any links mentioned by our guests. Most importantly, I want you to know the good news, the great news that you're not alone because God has promised to always be with you. With faith in Jesus Christ, the one who died for you and rose again, Jesus said when he left, he was going to leave a helper, a comforter, to be with us. God in us. Moms, that's superpower. So while you're washing dishes at your kitchen sink, while you're driving to and from work, while you're feeding that baby late into the night, while you're cleaning sticky floors, God promises to be just as present with you as when you're worshiping in a church pew. As it says in Zephaniah 3:17, the Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He takes great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love, and he will rejoice over you with singing. Now that's good news. Have a great day.